The noon sun burned mercilessly over the dusty frontier town of Coyote Bend, the kind of place where law was whatever the loudest gun said it was, and justice rarely bothered to stop for a drink. Merchants closed their shutters, children stayed indoors, and even the horses shifted nervously as if they felt something wrong tremble in the air. That wrongness took form in the town square. 5 young Apache girls hanging upside down from a tall cedar pole, their ankles tightly bound with coarse rope, their long braids brushing the hot ground as they struggled to breathe. Their names, Nayeli, Taza, Umi, Siali, and little Asha, were whispered by the wind, though no one else dared to speak them. The girls had been taken at dawn by a group of renegades who claimed they were spies, though everyone knew it was a lie. The real reason was uglier. The renegades wanted to send a message to the nearby Apache community that they were no longer welcome on land. The outlaws suddenly decided they owned. The townspeople watched from porches and balconies, some horrified, some pretending not to see, some simply too afraid to interfere. Gun smoke and cruelty ruled the streets, and the renegades thrived on fear like vultures around a dying thing. Their leader, a cruel-eyed man named Briggs, strutted proudly in front of the pole, tapping his revolver against his thigh while talking, big about punishment and law. Everyone knew he wasn't a sheriff, he wasn't even a ranch hand, but when a man leads a pack of armed hyenas, he gets to pretend he's a lion. Nayeli, the oldest of the 5 girls, clenched her jaw as she fought dizziness. She whispered strength to her sisters, telling them to keep their eyes open. Keep breathing, keep fighting. But the heat made the world blur, and the blood pooling in their heads made their hearts slow like tired drums. The ground spun beneath them or above them. It no longer mattered. Hope felt distant like a dying star. One of the onlookers, a stable boy no older than 14, whispered, "Someone's got to stop this." The older man next to him muttered, "Not me. Not unless I want my insides decorating a fence post." Briggs fired a shot in the air, laughing as the girls flinched. "You've got an hour left, maybe less," he taunted them. Though the crowd knew the exact time didn't matter. Nobody was meant to survive this. The street fell still again, heavy and breathless. Dust swirled lazily, coating boots, railings, windows, and the fading hope of every townsperson with a conscience. And then, from the far end of the street came the slow, even rhythm of horse hooves. Not hurried, not hesitant, just steady, calm, and absolute. Heads turned. Conversations halted. Briggs narrowed his eyes. A tall rancher on a dark bay horse emerged through the shimmering heat, riding with the quiet weight of a man who never wasted words, bullets, or breath. His hat cast a shadow over his eyes, but the townsfolk recognized him immediately. Caleb Ward, quiet as a wolf, rugged as the land. A man whose reputation for fairness spread farther than his ranch fences. Caleb wasn't the kind to poke into other people's business, but he wasn't the kind to ignore injustice either. When he saw the 5 Apache girls hanging upside down, his jaw clenched so hard a muscle ticked along the edge of his cheek. He didn't draw his gun. He didn't shout. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply guided his horse closer until he stopped beside Briggs, who smirked and swaggered toward him. "This ain't your land, Ward," Briggs sneered. "Ride on." Caleb's gaze slid from Briggs to the suffering girls. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, measured, coiled with thunder. "Untie them," Briggs laughed. His men laughed. Even the horses seemed to shift with unease. "Or what?" Briggs challenged. Caleb looked at him, and for a moment the town felt colder. "Or you'll learn how fast." Fairness turns to fury. A murmur rippled through the watching crowd. Caleb dismounted slowly, his boots hitting the ground with a quiet thud that somehow carried more weight than a gunshot. He didn't reach for his holster. He didn't need to. The air itself seemed to tighten, as if the entire town waited to see which man would break first. Briggs spat, smirked, and twirled his revolver. "Boys," he said loudly, "show our rancher friend what happens to heroes." 3 guns cocked in unison. The 5 Apache girls gasped weakly, their vision swimming, their hope flickering like a dying candle. Caleb lifted his head, placed his hand on the saddle horn, and the world suddenly felt seconds away from exploding. And that is the moment when everything changed, not from noise, but from the silence right before it. The world held its breath as Briggs' men raised their guns, but Caleb Ward didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't even shift his boots in the dirt. Instead, he said in a quiet voice that somehow made every man within 20 yards feel suddenly uncertain. Last chance. Perhaps it was the way he said it, calm, steady, like a man who didn't need luck, only time, or perhaps it was the way his hand rested loosely near his revolver. Not tense, not shaking, just patiently waiting. Whatever it was, the renegades hesitated, and that single heartbeat of doubt was all Caleb needed. His gun flashed from its holster, the movement so fast the eye couldn't track it. Only hear the crack of the shot. One of Briggs' men dropped his pistol as it flew clean out of his hand. Before the others reacted, Caleb fired again, another gun ripped from another outlaw's grip. The third man swung his weapon toward Caleb, but he never got to fire. Caleb tackled him with the kind of power earned from years working cattle and wrestling outlaws, off land that wasn't theirs. The two rolled in the dust, fists flying, boots kicking, townsfolk scattering. Caleb ended the struggle with a single punch that knocked the man cold. Briggs scrambled backward, startled by how quickly his show of dominance had collapsed into panic. "You stay back," he yelled, aiming his revolver at Caleb with shaking hands. "I ain't afraid to shoot." "Then shoot," Caleb replied. His voice was soft, but it carried across the entire square like steel cutting through silence. Briggs swallowed. His trigger finger twitched, and then the loudest voice in the town spoke without sound, the collective judgment of every man watching from the porches and railings. No one looked ready to defend Briggs. No one looked ready to die for him, and he knew it. His bravado crumbled. He lowered his gun, but too slow. Caleb's hand shot out and snatched it from his grip. Briggs stumbled back, breathing hard. Caleb pointed to the pole. "Untie them. Do it yourself." Briggs gasped. Caleb didn't argue. He simply stepped to the girls, cutting each rope with careful precision. Nayeli fell first, weak and trembling, and Caleb caught her gently, lowering her to the ground. The others followed, their faces pale, their breaths shallow, their worlds spinning after so long upside down. "Easy," he murmured, his voice gentler than anyone in Coyote Bend had heard from him. "You're safe now." Umi burst into tears. Little Asha clung to his arm. Even Taza, fierce as a firestorm, wept when her feet touched the ground. The townspeople watched in stunned silence, shame creeping through some, respect awakening in others. The stable boy ran forward with water. The general storekeeper brought blankets. The baker's wife rushed toward them with trembling hands, whispering apologies in a language she barely knew. Somewhere deep inside, the town realized it had let something monstrous happen right in front of them. And one man had reminded them of the line between fear and cowardice. As Caleb tended to the girls, Briggs scrambled to his feet. "This ain't over," he bellowed. "You're dead, Ward, dead." Caleb didn't look at him. "Ride," he said simply. Something in his tone, icy, absolute, made even Briggs understand if he didn't leave now, he wouldn't leave at all. Briggs mounted his horse in a wild scramble and galloped out of town, his men stumbling after him. No one followed. No one wanted him back. The Apache girls, slowly recovering, sat together wrapped in blankets. Caleb poured water into their cupped hands, speaking softly. Nayeli looked up at him with tired but steady eyes. "Why did you help us?" Caleb hesitated. "Because no one else did." She nodded, understanding more than he said. Moments later, a small group of Apache riders arrived, warriors, trackers, and elders who had been searching frantically for the missing girls. The moment they saw their daughters alive, the air trembled with emotion. One elder approached Caleb, placed a hand on his shoulder, and nodded in deep gratitude. "You protected what was ours," he said. "You protected what was human," Caleb replied. The Apache riders lifted the girls onto their horses, supporting them carefully, whispering comfort and home. As they rode out, Nayeli glanced back at Caleb and offered him a small, tired smile, a silent promise that this moment would be remembered. The town square remained hushed even after the riders disappeared into the horizon. The people looked at Caleb, really looked at him, for the first time. The stable boy spoke first. "You saved them." "Saved all of us, I think." Caleb didn't answer. He simply mounted his horse, tipped his hat, and began to ride away. But before he left the square completely, he paused and turned his horse slightly. "Remember today," he said, "not for what happened, but for what you didn't stop." And then he rode off down the dusty road, his silhouette fading into the sunlight like the ending of a legend still being written. Coyote Bend was never the same after that, and the story of the rancher who faced down a gang alone just to save 5 Apache girls became one of the greatest Wild West stories ever told. And if you want more powerful frontier legends just like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and join us for the next Wild West story, where every tale is deeper, braver, and wilder than the last.